Welcome to the Atheist in Recovery podcast, where we talk about finding hope in recovery. And now your host, Dr. Adina Silvestri.
Konnichiwa, guys, and welcome to episode 69 of the Atheists in Recovery podcast. And this month, we're starting a care package for the holidays series. And so there'll be a couple of movie reviews during this month, and there'll also be some new guests and some past guests coming on, and we'll be talking about, not movies, we'll be talking about how to navigate the holidays in recovery. And I want to start us off during this month with a movie. So if you've listened to my previous episodes, you know that I love, as much as I love book reviews, I also love movie reviews. I love movies because they can teach us, they can transform us, and they really can move us. And, it's something that you could think about. You could talk about it with others, with your friends, with yourself. I actually even have a movie club that I started throughout the pandemic just as a way to connect with my friends. So 28 days. Oh, and before I get to the movie review, I also want to encourage you to listen to the end of this podcast episode, as I've created a little tool for you guys that I think, a free tool for you guys that I think that you might like. So I will talk more about that at the end of the episode and give you a link so that you can check it out. Okay, on to the movie review. 28 Days. When I think about 28 Days with Sandra Bullock, I think about her character. I think about how flawed she is, but also how loved she is despite those flaws. And of course, she doesn't see that in the beginning. And with those flaws, she tries to hide them with excuses and lies and defense mechanisms. Very common for anyone that's not done the internal work that you sometimes need to do. And what's also interesting about Sandra Bullock / Gwen is how she's really trying hard to deflect those flaws. And she usually does that through humor. And so there is some humor in this movie, which I really appreciate. So let's talk about Gwen. So 28 Days starts with Gwen Cummings, who is a New York writer. She parties all night with her boyfriend Jasper. This is sort of her life. She parties all night with alcohol, with drugs, with sex. And this first scene of the movie is when they wake up from the night of partying, and the drinks still continue, and she's still downing drinks as she is getting ready to leave for her sister's wedding. She's late, of course, and she falls into the wedding cake and then decides that she's going to get into a car and drive to get the wedding cake replacement. And she drives right into somebody's house. And so that's sort of where we then cut to the rehab center. So she arrives at rehab. It was either jail or rehab. And so she decided to go to rehab, but she didn't really decide. Yeah, it was like, which one of these is the lesser evil? And as you've probably guessed, if you haven't seen the movie, she's in denial land. She doesn't feel like she has a problem. It's everybody else that has the problem, not her. She's in great health, even though she carries around a bottle of Vicodin everywhere she goes. And that's the thing with, as I'm sure you know, with any treatment, if someone is forcing you to do it, you're not going to get anything out of it, or not nearly as much. And I see that in the therapy room as well. If your husband is trying to get you to go to therapy, if your wife is trying to get you, if your best friend, if your boyfriend, whomever, it's just not, you don't want to be in that headspace. You're just not going to get anything out of it, no matter what people around you are telling you. You have to want to do the work. I mean, it's work. It is work. And so she's in this rehab, she doesn't have a problem, right? She's telling everyone she doesn't have a problem until the point in which she can't be alone in her room. It's so hard for her to be alone. She has all these flashbacks of her childhood. And she decides that earlier she decided to throw out this bottle of Vicodin. She decides that she's going to just go grab it now. She needs it. She can't be without it. So she just jumps out of a window. And as you can imagine, this does not end well for Gwen. And this is really where the journey of healing begins for Gwen. And the next point that I want to make about this movie is the codependency element in this movie, the intergenerational trauma. I mean, when Gwen is flashing back, as she does in a lot of these scenes, she is thinking about mom. She's thinking about mom as an alcoholic, how that was her life growing up, where mom would say, if you're not having fun, then what's the point? She would tell Gwen and her older sister. And there were times where mom would just pass out and Gwen would have to go to her and slap her on the face to get her to wake up. And that was sort of normal. That was normalized for the family, which I thought was really interesting. And so the codependency plays a strong theme in this movie. If it's not with Gwen and her sister, it's with Gwen and her boyfriend, Jasper. So Jasper comes for visits to see Gwen at the rehab center, brings her some Vicodin, brings her some alcohol, really just doesn't think that she has a problem. And proposes to her, and this is sort of where Gwen starts to turn the corner a little bit and just says, wait a minute, what are you doing with me? I'm such a mess. And you proposed to me at a rehab. So they sort of are leaning on each other. And, if Jasper doesn't want to admit that Gwen has a problem, because then that means that Jasper too has a problem, then I have to look in, because I'm living the same life as you. So if you're saying there's something wrong with your life, then there's something wrong with our life and the life that we share together. And that's something that I see often in my practice as well. If one person decides that they're going to get sober, it has to be the couple that gets sober. It really has to be the environment that can be conducive to sobriety. It's so important, guys. And especially in the beginning, I don't know any other way, really. And so we see that codependency weaving its way through. We see the trauma coming in and out of the flashbacks. And the other point I want to make is regret. So there is definitely regret for anybody. But I feel that when you've done a lot of damage to yourself, to others, that tends to stay with you. And I see that a lot. And so with Gwen, she's made a lot of mistakes. She admits, well, she doesn't admit it to others outwardly. In fact, when one of her fellow mates, Eddie, decides to talk about his horrible behaviors in the past and prompts Gwen, hey, what's your problem? Like, what have you done? Give me one of your greatest hits. She decides not to say anything. She just doesn't want to talk about it. Gets really angry, gets really nasty with Eddie. And later she goes up to him and tells him why, I don't want to admit these things. If I'm admitting these past mistakes, if I'm admitting these failures, then it's all going to come back. You're going to think less of me. What kind of person does this? She's saying all these things to Eddie. Who does this? Who leaves a child in the car for a couple hours? Not good people, and he's telling her, there's no judgment. I'm not judging you. And so I think that's a really lovely point in this movie. And I think that that's something that we can really glean from is our past is our past, guys. We are not our past. We're not. We are not these horrible mistakes and behaviors that we've made. Could you imagine if that's all we were? If that was the end of our story, we would never get out of bed. We would never survive. And so I see a lot of people just sort of stuck in this anxiety and this depression because of their past. And that doesn't have to be you. You really can move forward. It's work, obviously, but even the language that you use, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, that stuff really drives me crazy. So really just trying to focus on your future self, who you want to be, and make that reality a fact. Okay. The other point I like is, and I think that the movie doesn't do a great job of this, but don't look for the causes of your addiction. So there's a scene where Gwen's sister is talking to her at rehab, and Gwen's sister's so angry at her for ruining her wedding and doing all these other, just having to be that sister, right? That loved one that watches the person that they care most about just burn their life to the ground, and really just not knowing what to do about it. And so sister is looking for reasons. I wasn't a great sister. I didn't really take care of you. And I don't think that was a great scene in the movie, because I don't think that as family members, we should be doing that. We shouldn't be blaming ourselves. We're not the cause of our loved ones suffering. We're not the cause of them becoming an addict. And so acknowledging the pain is one thing, but saying that you're the cause, I don't agree with that. But there was a great scene towards the end, where they sort of just acknowledged each other's pain and embraced. And, the sister says, I wasn't there for you. And Gwen says, well, I didn't ask for help. And then the sister responds, yes, but we all need help, even if you don't think that you do. You do, And I love that. I think that even, we pride ourselves, especially in the US, for being independent, for having being able to do it all, and nobody has that kind of ability. Everybody needs help. Everyone needs a hand. Yeah. So that's all I'll say about that. And then life after rehab. As Gwen leaves the rehab, the group breaks into song, which I love. And they start singing, instead of singing their normal song that they would sing for everybody else, Gwen, they sang a special song for Gwen, which was really cute. It was Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, because, Gwen had definitely made her mark, to let everybody know that she didn't really buy into the chanting and everything. So they sang a different song, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. That was really kind of nice. And then you start to see a different Gwen as she's leaving, and you're kind of left to wonder, as the last scene plays, what is life like? We know at the very end that Jasper does make an attempt to be with her. He vows he's going to change, but then 2 scenes later, he's asking her to go hang out with the friends they used to party with. And so really it's probably not best for Gwen. And so she gets that, and she breaks up with him. That's hard, right? I mean, when we're in the beginning of recovery, we want to have our friends around us, but if those friends are still drinking and engaging the behaviors that got us to the place that we're at, we need to let go. We need to let go and trust that we will make new friends. And I get that. That is hard. So we're just sort of left to hang out with our imagination as to what happens after rehab. We don't know. And so that, I don't love that. I want there to be a 28-day sequel. But do you guys agree? Are there any movies about life after rehab? What happens next? I want the gritty, dirty details in a movie form, with actors. But yeah, I'm curious. So I think that is my review for 28 Days. Let me know what you think of the movie, if you've seen it. And before you go, I want to share with you this new tool. I get asked all the time, what are some resources to help me in my recovery journey? And I think that learning from others is really helpful. I think that you also need to build a life that's more rich than the life you had while you were drinking or doing drugs. That's also crucial. And so there's this product that I'm obsessed with, and I'm only going to promote products that I use and that I love. And this product is called Audible. I'm sure you've heard of it. And so I love it for many reasons. I'm not going to go into them, but I did make a video for you guys talking about all the reasons that I love it. And I've also, underneath the video, listed the top 10 AIR memoirs. And you could find that at atheistinrecovery.com/audible, AUDIBLE. And you could also support the podcast by utilizing one of the affiliate links on that page. Again, the link to the top recommended memoirs is atheistinrecovery.com/audible. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Atheists in Recovery podcast. For more great info and to stay up to date, head over to atheistinrecovery.com.